Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man who refuses to buy Girl Scout cookies because they rejected his idea of a steak-flavored cookie. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unkelbach, a man who constantly asks, where's the beef?
Why don't we have like not just steak flavored cookies? I want like a ribeye cookie. I want a New York strip cookie.
Yeah.
I want a pork chop cookie.
You see like a whole alternative line of Girl Scout cookies ready to come down.
I did see the other day someone who had like tried to turn slices of meat into potato chips, and I thought that was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and you know, the thing is like I feel like my intros are moving into a lot of truth. They're getting like less and less removed from being absurd Chuck Norris jokes. We just finished eating bison steaks.
There's been anything absurd about any of your
Well, there you go. Well, I would challenge you to go back and listen to all of them before you say that. But yeah, we just finished off a bison steak that your lovely wife, my adopted sister, made for lunch, for example. But like this dude, you don't know this, but every time I'm over here, and I'm over here a lot these days, it's like, oh, what are they having for dinner when I'm leaving? It's like always a steak.
Well, you may not have realized this until now, but it's one of the little things that's helped change you, Nick. Like eating food at my house, like eating steak. Like, you know, we changed a lot of things in your life. One of them is we changed your diet.
That's where this is going. I don't know why. I don't know why I even question that. It would somehow turn into some sort of insult for me. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about something that's going to help every single person. As always, it's the disease of quitting. Now, fortunately for us, we have a guy who's seen a lot of people quit on the podcast. No, I'm not talking about myself and my work experience. I'm talking about Garrett in the SEAL teams who, I mean, if there's
I've been trying really hard, but I can't get Nick to quit yet.
Yeah, I mean, anyways, maybe I need to listen to this episode 5 times once it comes out, and I'll reconsider things. This is the last episode of The Impossible Life. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't think people realize how, Navy SEALs are pretty prominent in the age of social media. I mean, we can all talk about some of the famous ones that we know of. I mean, Goggins is going to come to mind. Jocko is going to come to mind, right? Like, there's some SEALs.
Hey, I met a kid the other day that he was talking about he wanted to be Johnny Kim, right? Johnny Kim, not just Navy SEAL. Johnny Kim was at SEAL Team 3 under Jocko Willink, right, a junior officer, then went on to Harvard Medical School, and now is an astronaut at NASA.
Wow.
You don't know Johnny Kim?
No,
Johnny Kim is, there's so many memes about Johnny Kim of like, don't make sure my mom doesn't find out about Johnny Kim.
That's hilarious, but thanks for that diversion.
Super overachiever.
But the point is that they seem like, I think Navy SEALs have they're not like shrouded in mystery as much now. You can watch a bunch of YouTube videos. You can watch our YouTube videos and learn a lot about the SEAL teams. But I think people don't realize how rare it is to have a Navy SEAL. So or to know a Navy SEAL, or even to be a SEAL. So how many SEALs are there?
All time, less than 6,000 Navy SEALs. And that's not active duty. That's living and dead since the SEAL teams were formed in 1962.
6,000.
Little less than 6,000.
In
right.
60 years.
Active duty, approximately 3,000 Navy SEAls.
That's that's crazy. So just for reference, for people who are like, oh, wow, okay, there are 32 teams in the NFL. They each get a 53 active man roster, and then they also have their practice squads that they have. So, I mean, even if you just look at the 53 active roster, there's 1,700 NFL players just to this season. And
every year, and what's the turnover? Because the average NFL player is 3 years.
3 years. 3 years is the average career in the NFL, and obviously you guys signed 6-year contracts as a bare minimum. But I just think if you think you have 7 rounds of drafts, and then you get a bunch of undrafted guys that sign. So I mean, you're signing roughly 230 to 250. There's probably around 300 guys when you look at undrafted guys every year that get at least their shot in the NFL, where they're on a team and they're on a spring training roster or whatever. So how many SEALs are being made a year right now?
So each year there's about 5 classes, and of those classes, the head counts vary. Yeah. But they, on average, over the last 20 years, on average, they've got 888 students beginning a BUDS class at some point in a year.
Okay.
Right, but somewhere between those 5 classes, because the number can vary. And they, for over 20 years, since 2000, they've had a track record of an 80% attrition rate.
80%.
So 888 students will begin SEAL training. 175 will become SEALs every year.
Jeez. So there's, I mean, I hope that gives now, and you said something to me when we were talking about this. You said that's the people that actually
you would think,
get to
if you would think, okay, so, 888 people, that's like thinking 888 people tried out for the NFL.
Right.
How many people want to be in the NFL? for every student that shows up to SEAL training, one of those 888, there's approximately 20 students who have tried to get that position. So over 16,000 students per year to get down to 175 that become SEALs. And to be fair, right, I've where I've heard those numbers and what I've looked at, some of those 20, right, of 20 kids who try to get the one spot, some of those people are people who get, 2 months into a tryout and then they're like, okay, this isn't for me. I'm not going to qualify. But then you also have other people who tried really hard, didn't make it past pre-buds. You had people who tried really hard, couldn't qualify for the spot. Of those 20 people, 19 essentially could not qualify to get the spot because you compete across the nation. There's 888 students going to buds every year, and you're competing against over 10,000 students who want those positions.
Yeah. I say all that to say, just to highlight for people how elite it is to get into that group. I mean, 6,000 people in all of history for 60 years. I mean, there's a lot of things that we could look at where we think of them as really difficult, and there's fewer SEALs than there are in.
Well, and the way that I look at it, there's a lot of perspective that I had looking at that. I never chose to be, I'm not going to see myself as, I didn't know those numbers back then, but I thought I'm not going to be one of the 19. I'm not going to be one of the 80%. I knew it was high. I didn't know it was that high back then. But also, I don't look at those numbers and say, oh, look at me, right? What I know is that for a lot of people, I'm the only Navy SEAL they'll ever meet or ever know, right? You can see some on TV, but for the people that I meet, the people that I have a relationship with, I'm the only one that they ever really know. And I wear that as a good type of burden that I represent the SEAL teams, right? It's a very special part of the American military. And if I don't reflect well on that, and I've translated that to the way that I live my life in every area, but if I'm not a good reflection of the SEAL teams, right, just my one life, right, I'm one of 6,000, right? But if I'm not a good reflection, it reflects poorly on the SEAL teams. And so I also look at that in the reverse and say, everything that people think about a Navy SEAL, it's not because of me. I just get to live up to that, right? Navy SEALs have an incredible reputation. The reputation they have isn't because of Garrett Unkelbach.
Right.
I just get to walk in that. All I can do is uphold that standard. I'm not raising it any higher. I can make it look poorly though if I don't live the right type of life.
Yeah. I appreciate that about you, man. I just think about how elite of a mindset you have to get through buds and to do what you do. I mean, there's nobody out there that's like a marshmallow on mindset. Everybody out there is.
I will say I did not meet one student in all of my time in the Navy from boot camp to getting into a buds class. I never met one student who was like, yeah, well, I hope this works out.
Right.
Every single person was like, this is my dream.
Yeah.
Every single person deeply, at least in boot camp and early on, some people's belief changed pretty quickly when it started getting hard, but everybody had a deep belief in the beginning that they could do this and that this was their destiny.
Right. And yet you still saw so many people quit. So
80%.
You saw quitting at its extreme. I think we see people quit for reasons way far less than what you talk about, what you have seen.
It was a very dramatic and traumatic type of quitting, because the people aren't quitting I don't think I like baseball anymore.
Right.
Right. These are men, young men who've trained and prepared, many of them for years. Right. So I met some guys that had trained for 6 and 7 years to get to this moment.
Yeah.
I was on the short end of that, but I met guys who had trained for 6 and 7 years to get to this moment. And then when they quit, not they failed. I saw some of those too. They just failed and didn't meet the standard. But guys who quit, when you've prepared for something for 6 or 7 years and it gets so hard that you give up on it, right? 6 years to come down to a moment, 7 years to come down to a moment, and you give up on it, it split these guys in half.
Oh, I can imagine.
They lost their identity. They lost their future. They didn't know who they were anymore. And it was very painful for these guys. So it was not a kind quitting.
Yeah. No, well, I want to get into that. So let's talk about the first guy that you saw quit. Because you told me the story about this beforehand. And I think the reason I want you to tell it, and we're obviously not going to use his name, but the reason I want you to tell is because I think it's a good example.
Well, this is
for
the
everybody.
guy. This is the first guy who quit in buds.
Oh, right.
Not
okay.
the first quitter I ever saw, because there were people there's actually some people, there was a guy before we ever made it to buds, in pre-buds, which is kind of it was like training camp before actual, the real deal. It's not even, this is just the warm-up version of buds. It's not really as hard as buds. It's just a little, we're just going to dabble, right?
Yeah.
Dip our toe in the water. There was a guy in my class who quit in pre-buds who was one of the top athletes in our class. The instructors, all of the students were like, what?
I mean, is that they don't have a bell there, do they?
No, you can actually quit in pre-buds, but it's not like it's not the thing that like it is in buds.
Well, yeah, they're not trying to. So everybody was like, "Wait, no, that's not yet." Like,
yeah,
you're
and
early.
now that you think about it, because I remember he quit on when we were at the pool. It was like, hey, this is kind of what it's going to be like when you come do pool days in buds, and it was not near as hard as what the actual pool day was. And now that you say that, I don't remember us having the bell there.
Right.
For him, like he quit and everyone, but that's not the story I was going to tell. There was a guy in my class. He was the first one to quit in buds, because if you quit when you get to first phase, right, when buds officially starts, and buds is basic underwater demolitions, when you get to this part, you get these green helmets, right? And I have all these helmets in my my office. If you ever do a Zoom with me, you'll see them in my office background. And the reason I have those helmets is because I didn't quit.
Right.
If you quit, right, and if first phase is a green helmet, second phase is a blue helmet, third phase is a red helmet. If you quit, you lay your helmet on the grinder.
Yeah.
Right. And so the first helmet goes right below the bell. And by the end of first phase, there is a long stack of helmets, starting with, you started a class with 160 students. And by the end of first phase, you've whittled it down to, sometimes 50 students or 45 students. And so there's a long stack of helmets, and all those helmets have names.
Is it 6 weeks first phase or
8
weeks?
First phase is 8 weeks. And that's where the majority of the helmets,
right.
If you make it past Hell Week, there's a good chance you're going to actually become a SEAL. So in that short amount of time, a lot of these helmets stack up. And every time you're on the grinder, you can look over there and see the names, because everyone's name is on their helmet. You can see the names, and it's like this person quit, and then this person quit, and then this person quit. It kind of matters when people quit, and it's pretty significant. Like when people finally start dropping out of your class, like now I'm really in this final training zone to become a Navy SEAL, and people are quitting. And this is not really my proudest moment, but before we started first phase, one of the officers in my class was like, running a bookie on being a bookie on who's going to quit. And there were bets on who was going to be the first to quit.
Did anyone put money on you?
I don't think so. I don't think anybody, it was about first to quit.
Right.
I don't think, the guy who was my roommate, if you know my story,
yes,
might have tried to put a bet on me, but I don't remember hearing that there was. That doesn't mean there wasn't. But anyways, I hadn't placed a bet. I hadn't planned on participating. But then the night before, this one guy in my class comes to me and he's like, "Man, I've been thinking about quitting." And I was like, "Yo, what's the deal, man? Like, you've been this has been easy for you." And he just started talking to me about, he's like, "Do you know what they're going to do to us tomorrow?" Right. And he was just like telling me the story of how bad it's going to be. And, who knows how long we'll be on the grinder. Like, and I just, sealed my lips and just listened to him for a minute. 'Cause I could feel his fear just like taking his story away, like a kite in high winds. Like, he's just gone. I'm just gonna sit here and listen and watch what happens. And I was basically like, "Hey man, don't quit." But like, that was all I had to say, because I knew he was gonna quit. So he didn't tell me I'm gonna walk out there and quit tomorrow, but he basically told me like, I'm gonna walk out there and quit tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I was hoping. This is kind of sad. I was hoping he would be first, and he was. Because right after he told me that, I walked down to the officer's room on the first floor, and I was like, "Hey, can I still place a bet?"
They're like, "Wow, Uncle Bach making a late entry. What is this down to?" Oh, and he won.
Well, there was no regulatory body on that betting.
I can't believe you guys weren't regulated. Like an officer bookie in the SEAL teams. Okay, so you won the bet.
I did win that bet.
So let me ask you a question, and we didn't talk about this beforehand. Was his story way worse than what it actually was? Because you always say the anticipation of pain is worse than the pain itself.
Well, what he was describing was true, but it's perspective, right? It was his perspective on it. And it was like he was actually a really tough guy. Like,
and he was an athlete, it sounds like, from what you said.
He was most of the stuff wasn't that hard for him. Like the runs and swims hadn't been a big deal for him. So I was actually kind of surprised. And I hadn't seen him like really struggle or suffer with anything, but he just made it so big in his mind. And it was the anticipation of it. And just the way he was talking to me, like I would never have picked him to quit first. But then when he came and talked to me about how he was feeling, I was like, I think he's going to quit. I didn't know he would quit first. I was still making a wager.
Well, yeah.
But like, I mean, he was like, we ran onto the grinder, and everyone runs and stands in these fins, like think like swim fins that are painted on the grinder, and that's what you stand on. That
you showed me that. It
says
Legacy,
so everyone,
right?
you run in, you scream your class number, all that, and you stand there, and the instructors talk for just a second, and then the PT begins. As soon as they like moved us into the first physical thing, he ran right to the bell. Like he had already decided.
Wow.
Right. He didn't even like wait for it to get hard. He had just already decided, I'm going to quit. He just, waited for the action to start.
Did the instructors just go nuts when he did?
They just started cheering. Like they started hooping and hollering like, yes, we already got our first one.
Yeah. Cause that's got to be quick for them. They're like, man, we didn't even do anything.
No,
yet.
that on day one, that is their job. Like how many bell rings can we get today?
Man. Well, that's a different kind of salesman, ringing the bell. But I hope everybody catches that. So think about this. You've got, and because the reason we're talking about this, quitting is just never going to get you anywhere that you say you want to go. And I think it's, you and I are both fans of Alex Hormozi, and we were listening to him talk, and he said something. He was talking about most people don't struggle with choosing a plan. They don't struggle with doing a plan. They struggle with sticking to a plan. And I think that's such a great way to put it, because so many people, we're coming up to the end of the year, G. So many people are going to set their New Year's resolutions. The calendar changing means that everybody is going to be spurred with a bunch of belief about how they can make everything better. And truthfully, they can. But the difference is that if they don't actually understand what they're committing to, and they don't have a wise approach to what they're doing, they're going to end up giving themselves a reference experience of quitting. And as we've covered on previous episodes, I think it's February 7th is when the average New Year's resolution is died by. So they're going to make it a month. They're going to make it 5 weeks out of 52, not even 10% of the way.
That is unfortunate. I don't know where that guy, I know his name, I'm just not going to say it. I don't know where he is. I haven't talked to him since, 2010. But I hope he didn't continue his track record of quitting. And what we're talking about today on the podcast is the disease of quitting. And I remember when I was going into training, I knew I never wanted to have the disease of quitting. And I knew that this was an opportunity to, I'm not big on vaccinations, but I knew that SEAL training was an opportunity for me to vaccinate myself against quitting for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Right. Because I knew if I can do this, basically, like if I make it through SEAL training, there's many reasons I wanted to do it. This is one of them. I said, if I can do this thing that is so hard that most people would be afraid to even try.
Yeah.
If I could go and do this, then what else could I do?
Yeah.
Right. If I can do this, what else could I do? It's really like a really exciting question to get to ask yourself.
Right.
On the flip side of that, I said, if I quit this, it's hard, and I could say like, well, it's the hardest military training in the world. It's okay that you quit.
Lots of excuse.
Right. I could talk myself into it and justify quitting on that. But if I quit this because it's hard, what else will I quit because it's hard?
Yeah.
And like that guy who quit first in our class, he didn't even quit when it was hard. He quit because he was afraid of it getting hard.
Right.
And I hope he didn't go on to continue to quit things in his life because he was afraid of it getting hard.
Yeah.
And so as we're going to get into like, we're talking about the disease of quitting today. We're going to give you the symptoms of quitting, the diagnosis of quitting, the cure for quitting. But what you'll get in your life if you have the disease of quitting, like, cancer, ultimately, if you don't get rid of it, it'll kill you.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't get rid of quitting in your life, and that's what we want to accomplish today, to help you see the quitting in your life, diagnose it, and get rid of it. But if you don't get rid of quitting in your life, it gets worse.
Yeah.
That cancer will grow. Quitting will get worse in your life to the point that you can't accomplish anything and you can't be fulfilled and you will be very miserable. We don't want anyone to be quitters.
Yeah, and I hope you guys all capture that. I mean, that's the seriousness of what we're talking about. I think that in the story you shared, what struck me, you didn't share it when we were prepping for this, but was that actually he was really well prepared, and it was completely in his head.
He was one of those guys who had spent years preparing,
and also was physically showing all the signs that this was going to be, that he had done a good job. And
I was kind of curious or confused as to why he was he was coming to me, because I wasn't seen as one of the best in the class.
Yeah.
And he was like in the better athlete category.
Yeah.
So I was like, why is this guy consoling to me?
Yeah. Well, there's two quotes I want to share before we get into the symptoms, and we're going to dive in that. One is from the greatest basketball player of all time, Michael Jordan. He said, if you quit once, it becomes a habit. Never quit. That's MJ, right? And, you got to listen to MJ. Then another one from my friend, Garrett Unkelbach, who says your quit defines you. And that's what you said it in not as few words. And you said,
I was telling the story of where that line came
exactly,
from.
Because if you quit on one thing, then what you're saying to yourself, and you've said this before on other podcasts, is you're saying, as soon as it gets this hard, I'll quit again. And you're literally like setting a marker for yourself every time that, like, hey, this is the barrier for us. We don't go any further to that. And if you're trying to live the impossible life and you truly want to have the things that you say you want to have, if you're a person that's pursuing dreams that you feel like God's made you for greatness, you're going to have to push way beyond where you think your barriers are. It's just the way it is. So, G, let's talk about this. The first symptom of a quitter, look, quitting doesn't come in and go like, hey, you should quit. And you go, you know what, you're right.
And understand these are symptoms, right?
Correct.
You can have chest pain, right, which is a symptom of a heart attack, Or, maybe I just punched you in the chest.
Right.
Right. Just because you experience a symptom doesn't mean you have the disease.
That really happened. He did punch me in the chest. But
that stopped the heart attack. You were about to have one.
Appreciate that. Magical fist pump of life. Anyways, but yeah, we want you to recognize these because this is the first step in not quitting, is to start to recognize the symptoms. And the first symptom is you consider it. You start to listen to.
Yeah, what does it mean to consider it, right? This is the guy that I told the story of. Let's just call him Matt, so I don't have to keep calling him the guy. This is the story of Matt considering quitting, right? Before you ever quit, you think about it. Because when you first start, you won't even consider it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? When you start, you won't even consider it. I don't know why you would ever sign up for anything that you're like, before you even decide you want to do it, you've already thought, maybe I'll quit that.
This is a prenup. You're making a prenup before you get married.
Right. If you do that, you are set up to fail.
For sure.
And people do that, but most don't. Right. If we're setting out to do something with even an ounce of wisdom or an ounce of intention, we're setting out with no intention of quitting. Right. But the first symptom of maybe you have this disease of quitting is you start to consider it. You think about it. Maybe I could. Maybe I would quit. Like, maybe I'll ring the bell. It's been really hard today. I don't know if I want to keep doing this. And we don't really consider quitting.
Right.
We consider what the alternative of where we're at is. Right.
Yeah.
It's not that you're thinking about like, well, maybe I don't want to choose my destiny today.
Right.
Right. What you consider is maybe I could just get out of the cold water.
Yeah.
Right. So many people in SEAL training quit in the cold. They quit in surf torture.
Yeah.
So you're not supposed to. I'm trying to remember what the new PC name is for it. It's a stupid name. That's why I forgot it already.
Yeah.
Because we called it surf torture, right? And that's what it is. They're going to torture you in the water.
Yeah.
You're going to sit there until you're basically, they would temperature probe us. And it's one thing to like get in your ice bath for 10 minutes, which is quite a while, right? How about you get in the cold water and there's a temperature probe in you and they're going to keep you in the cold water until you get down to a temperature around 91, 92 degrees that it's nearly impossible. If we let you go any further, you would die.
Right.
We'll bring you out right before you would die, warm you up a few degrees, right? This is a cold that most people have never known.
Right.
You'll get that cold, and then we'll warm you up a little bit. We'll do health checks. The medic will come down, look everyone in the eye, look at their body, make sure they're good, and then put them back in the water. Right? That it's a different type of cold, and guys would. That's where a lot of guys quit.
I love how you say warm you up like they had a nice fire and some hot cocoa.
No, it's
warm
just
you
like
up was like exercise.
Stand up, move around a little bit,
right?
Like get some blood flow and then put you right back in. And the considerate that I'm talking about, it's not like, guys who were in SEAL training considered a life of not being a SEAL. They considered just getting out of the water.
Right.
That's the considerate that I'm talking about.
Yeah, you just start to second guess like, well, hey, you start to play out the scenario. What would it look like? And your brain is so good at like minimalizing things and maximizing things that don't hurt you when you're that don't help you when you're in a moment. I talked about that when we were climbing the mountain. The pressure of your brain whenever we were going through all the elevation. I don't know whether to call it suffering because that sounds a little bit dramatic, but just the difficulty, I should say. That was my biggest takeaway, was that my brain was telling me like, dude, if you feel this way now, you've got another 9 hours of this. How do you think you're going to feel in an hour, let alone 2? That's what your brain tells you, but it's not. It's a lie.
I'm looking forward to our next mountain climb.
Yeah, I know you are, dude. I am too, because I think I'm going to be even better.
So what does considerate lead into?
Well, this is where you put this phrase, and I think it's so well coined, is you start to date your excuses.
Yeah, so dating your excuses, what does that look like? Well, let's think about this of... we're using the analogy of SEAL training, and I want you to apply the disease of quitting to whatever area of life you're in. But let's use dating real quick in a place that people are familiar with it, like dating a woman or dating a man. Well, you would consider it in the context of dating a woman. Well, you're married.
Right.
And you don't want to quit being married, but you've began to consider it.
Right.
And not that you've considered not being married. What you've considered is other women.
Right.
Right. And then this is a very sad and dark path that men walk down. That you're married to a woman and you begin to consider someone else.
Right.
Right. And you shouldn't. Right?
Right.
And you're like, I don't want to quit. Right. I don't want to get divorced. I don't want to go through all of that. But you've considered it. You've thought about other women. And the truth is, we've all crossed that line.
Right.
We've all thought about another woman. But then what happens from there is you move to the second phase, which is you begin to date your excuses. You begin to think about all of these reasons why you could quit.
Right.
You begin to think about it like that is actually a good reason, whether it would be a reason for you to pursue another woman or a reason for you to quit, get out of the water and quit SEAL training. Well, I tried really hard.
Right.
I gave the best that I could. It was very cold. You know, I couldn't feel my feet. I was numb all over. I was about to die, right? Even though you have medics there that are removing you of all of that excuse, you tell this story to yourself and you begin to date your excuses. Excuses don't just like go from I'm not going to accept that excuse to a point where I'm going to take that excuse and I'm going to walk out the door. By dating your excuses, you slowly form a relationship with them.
That's exactly right.
Men don't wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to blow up my marriage today.
Right.
No man does that. But men will wake up one day and they make a poor choice. And that poor choice begets another poor choice.
Yep.
And you slowly you date it. You allow this thing in, right? If you're married, you shouldn't be dating another woman.
Correct.
And you don't think you're dating another woman, but you think about her, you begin to form emotional attachment to her, you have communications with her, and you slowly form this relationship. That's what and I hope that this is like borderline disturbing to some people in the way that I'm talking about it. Well, we do this with our excuses.
Yep.
Right, you slowly allow this relationship with you shouldn't even talk to that person, right? I should not even be having a conversation with this woman. You shouldn't even be having a conversation with that excuse, but you do.
Yeah.
And you think about it, and then you talk to it, then you form an emotional attachment to it, and then when things are hard, you go back to it for more emotional attachment, right? And because that excuse makes you feel good, that's what dating your excuses looks like.
Yeah, and all of it. I mean, you touched on it without saying the word, but really, you start to focus on it, right? And you talked about what you focus on, you hang on to. And so what's happening is you're starting to get a tighter and tighter grip of hanging on to whatever it is, whether it's the excuse here or, as you were talking about, the hypothetical other woman. And keep in mind, this is always deceptive. Excuses, the other woman, these are always deceptive. If you're talking about the other woman, it comes in with like you start to notice something like, hey, I like that about that person. And then you look back at your own wife and you're going, oh, I wish my wife would do that. That's how these things creep in. It doesn't come in with like, hey, adultery. It creeps in with something that seems logical, just like an excuse comes in. So then what happens? Gee, you kind of went into it, but you start having a conversation or like an explanation.
Real quick before we go into the next one. When you're in the cold, when you're doing surf torture and buds, right? They make the excuses look really, they make the getting out seem really appealing. Right. While you're in the water and you're, shivering, you're just alone with your thoughts for an hour. Right. That's how long they'll leave you in that at 52 degrees, which is like average temp for San Diego. They leave you in there for an hour.
Right.
Right. You've got an hour to make a choice to quit, which they know that's why it gets so many people, because they're alone with their thoughts.
Yeah.
Right. They have to just continue to you can't like run from your quitting. You can't just like get in the zone. You just have to continually choose not to quit for an hour. And what they'll say over the bullhorn is, hey, if you'll get out, we've got hot chocolate up here and coffee. We'll put a jacket on you. And a lot of times especially during Hell Week, they'll start fires on the beach. And they're like, when you get out, we'll let you come over here right by the fire. Like we'll make it better immediately.
Do guys actually get to go by the fire when they quit? Mm-hmm. So they stand up there and make them think about like, hey, guess what?
No. If you get up out of the water, and you come to an instructor, like as soon as you get out, you shouldn't be out of the water, right? You should be in the water with the class. And if you get out of the water, an instructor is going to be right on top of you. And first he's like, are you quitting? And you better say yes, right? If you like stutter or anything, he's going to be right on top of you. And he knows you're vulnerable. And then he'll take you down the beach and give you like, if you're like, you got out of the water, we all know you got out of the water to quit.
Right.
And so now if you're even second guessing it, you're going to like get some extra punishment because they're just going to help you. You tried to backpedal and they're just going to kick you back over the line and get you to quit.
Right.
Right. But then, you quit. And then when you quit, the switch flips immediately. Those instructors are so nice to you, right? They don't want to hurt you.
Right.
They just don't want you here.
Right.
If you don't belong here, we don't want you here. Huh. But then as soon as, in the same way that you've seen me be this way with people, right? Where they can flip the switch immediately. And it's like, hey, look, I'm sorry it didn't work out here for you. Right. Like, let's get you comfortable and then get you, do you need anything? And then
so they do get to go by the fire?
Yeah. Well, whatever they need, really, they'll give it to them.
Wow.
Right. Like you're no longer a bud student. You've quit. Right. They're going to treat you like a normal person. Huh. Right. When you're in buds, you've submitted yourself to the toughest military training in the world. As soon as you deselect from that, they'll treat you the same way they'd treat somebody at Starbucks.
Wow.
They're like, all right, man, let's get you what you need. And then when you're ready, we'll go in the office and sign some paperwork.
Dang. That's crazy, man.
Oh,
that's like dating the devil.
So I was never a first phase instructor. I've just assisted.
Yeah.
But I've seen that conversation happen. And I've seen it happen on a man's face when he quit and the instructor changes and it's like it changed them just as
because
fast.
They realized that they gave into the game.
Yeah. They realized the reality that they just walked into.
Now, I hope that slaps you in the face. I really hope it does. The example you gave of Matt, I was hoping we call him Quincy because it sounds like quit, but whatever. The example you gave of Matt, you could have everything going for you, right? And because you're not playing the game, let's be honest, in your head, you get on the other side of it and you're like, oh man, what did I just fall for? Oh man, regret. It weighs in tons, doesn't it, G?
It always does.
The price of discipline is ounces. The price of regret is tons. That's the Jim Rohn quote. Amazing.
So we go from dating excuses to where?
You said to conversations or explanations, and I feel like you kind of already went into that.
Well, this is, if I could just elaborate on this part, this is the weak side of you writing their sales script, right? I'm going to write my script to, not just to the sales script, the weak part of me is spending all this time writing the sales script to get the best part of me to quit. Mm-hmm. And this is the conversation, these is the explanations that I'm going to give to all my family on why I walked away from my marriage. Right. This is going to be the conversation I'm going to tell people of, this is why it just didn't work out for me in SEAL training. I tried real hard, right? Whatever that quit is that you're going to walk away from, you write that script well ahead of time, right? And so remember what these are that we're talking about. Just because you have this doesn't mean you're like inevitably stuck with the disease of quitting. But it means you've got some chest pains, and buddy, you better take some baby aspirin and call 911.
Yeah.
Because you're about to have a heart attack. You're about to quit something. You're about to make a very terrible decision. So I'm talking about these, you didn't know that before.
Right.
People oh, well, chest pain, maybe I'll just take some Pepto, drink another Coke, whatever. It's weird,
Yeah.
But now people know, you're having chest pains, that's what you should do.
Yeah.
Take some baby aspirin and call 911 because you're probably about to have a heart attack. And people who are susceptible to that know that. And if you can be aware of those symptoms, you might prevent yourself from from dying of a heart attack or of quitting something that you shouldn't quit.
Yeah. Now we're talking about buds. We're talking about your marriage. We're talking about big things. I don't want people to slip up oh, I'm not going to leave my marriage. I would never do that. Look, I'm talking about you quit your diet. You quit your workout plan. You quit your personal self improvement plan.
All these things apply. It's just not as extreme of a situation. It's easier for me to have seen these things because I've seen it in an extreme situation. But if you take these to these areas in your life that aren't as extreme, you're going to see the same things I'm talking about.
Exactly right.
It's just you were busier. The thing wasn't as important. It's not like, your destiny may not depend on your diet in this season of your life, but you still don't want to quit it. And these things that we're talking about, these symptoms, they're in everything that you quit.
And that's what I want to say, because part of the conversation or explanation that you're going to have with yourself is going to be exactly what we just said. Well, it's not my marriage. I'm not trying to be a Navy SEAL. Look, I can always pick it up again next month. Look, you are literally playing the game right there. You're falling for it. And it's
that's right into our next part.
Exactly.
What comes after these conversations?
Well, it comes into the narrative where you start to justify your excuses, right? Because you're like, well, I really shouldn't have committed to this in the first place. What I can come back to this because it's not time sensitive. I can just pick it up another time. And all you're doing is you're just starting to. You have now bought. You've already bought what's coming at your way. Yeah, you've been sold, and now you're just trying to add more weight. You're adding the bonuses to the offers. You're like, you know what? Not only am I going to take this, I will get the maintenance plan, and go ahead and throw in the the extended warranty as well. You're literally buying the full package at this point. You flipped over the whole line so that when you go to somebody, this is what you'll see in defiant quitters. They'll come up and they'll tell you exactly why they quit, and it was a great decision. I feel good about it.
They'll sell it to you the same way it was sold to them.
That's exactly right. And it's funny because sometimes when I've seen people quit on things and quit on them myself, and I've told people the story, I'll look back on that and I'm just going to talk about myself because I can't talk for anybody else. I feel ashamed because I'm like, you know what? I know what I told them wasn't 100% true. It was 100% the slant that I need to take on it to feel okay about it. And that's shameful, man. I honestly don't feel proud of that at all.
We sell people the same deception that we're sold, hoping that they won't reflect back to us reality.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe if you'll be deceived like me, then you won't make me feel bad about the fact that I've walked down the wrong path.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And the last symptom of quitting that we're going to talk about
is increased severity.
These are the increased severity in the narrative. Those are the same thing. This last symptom I want to talk about is the quitting.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's
quitting is a right? Quitting does not mean you have the disease of quitting. The disease of quitting is a pattern of quitting in your life. The disease of quitting is this disease that you keep, it's a disease that forces you to continually quit.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to talk about it here in a second. Just because you quit something doesn't mean you have the disease.
Very good. Now, so this is the diagnosis part, and you talked about it comes down to the source of the symptom. And is it the source of the symptom hey, I need to go another direction? Or is it, why does it matter? Because those are two very different sources.
Right. So we covered all the symptoms. Let's just review those really quick, right? You consider it. You date the excuses. You have conversations and explanations to allow the excuses. You have this narrative that you justify your excuses to other people. And then you have the quitting. Those are all the symptoms.
Yeah.
Right. And a doctor, if you sit down with him and like you try to tell him, hey, I think I've got, such and such disease. He's like, okay, well, tell me your symptoms.
Right.
Right. And then he's going to ask you some questions.
Yep.
And he's going to take your symptoms and he's going to take your answers to his questions to try and diagnose you. And he may get some diagnostic tests too, like blood and stuff like that, hopefully.
Yeah.
But your doctor is going to take the information you give him and he's going to diagnose you, right? So the symptoms are not the symptoms are not the truth.
Yeah.
Right. They're facts, but they're not the whole picture.
Right.
And so to diagnose someone, this is what Nick is saying, is you've got to look at the source of the symptom.
Because we're trying to determine, do you have the disease of quitting or not, right? And this is really where the diagnosis starts coming in.
And here's, I'm going to put like two thought processes, two mindsets next to each other to talk about the two different types of quitting, right? And if you've been like loosely paying attention, you need to really pay attention now. The two thought processes. This is number one, where most people who quit, this is kind of where they get to in their life. This little thought is in that sales script. This little thought is in the dating of the excuses, and it's this thought. It's why does it matter? Right? Like, well, I've been working out for a while and I'm starting to get in shape, but I mean, really, why do I need to work out?
Yeah.
Right. It's why does it matter? And it can like you can say that same statement in a lot of different ways, but that is the foundational statement that seeps into your quitting disease is why does it matter? And it is that the why does it matter? It's a manipulative voice trying to tell you that the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Yep. Exactly right.
Because to be someone who supersedes quitting is you're someone who's a price payer. Right. But this statement of why does it matter is someone is a voice that's trying to tell you it's so hard, but there's no payoff.
Yeah.
Right. Why do you need to keep working out? It hurts when you work out. Do you feel it like this is the awful voice in your head? It hurts so much when you work out. Do you really like that?
Yep.
Do you enjoy working out? Working out's so hard. Mm-hmm. It's so painful. I mean, and look at you, you're still fat. Why do you keep working out?
Yeah, what you really want, you just want to be overall healthy and enjoy your life. Right?
Yeah,
that's what you want.
Yeah, you just want to be happy.
Yeah.
Right. Don't go to the gym, go home.
Yeah. Go home, get some rest. You can always pick it up come back.
You worked hard yesterday. Yeah. You should sleep in.
You're probably sore. You don't want to get hurt.
And if I just sleep in today.
Yeah. It'll be fine. Now, this is fresh in my mind because Garrett, once again, he pushed this challenge. And if you follow us on social media, you'll see that we are battling currently as part of this. But basically, we have the Brazos Bend 100, which we are going to complete this year. It's going to be in early
You're
December.
welcome to come run with us. You're welcome to just come out and hang out. There's going to be if you just come, by the way, if you could have zero desire to run in the Brazos Bend, if you just come, you're going to meet a lot of cool people and you can cheer for us as much or as little as you want.
Yeah, or you can hurl abuse at us as well if you really want to take that route.
It's fuel for me, so please.
I was going to say, Garrett will absorb your hate and it'll make him run faster, so thank you. But
I might need it.
As part of this training, though, so we're in the home stretch and Garrett was just like, look, we got to ramp this up because it's not a priority for us. We both have other things that are way higher priority, but we've committed to doing it and we're going to do it. So we're running every single day, 6 days a week now in November. We're doing a 10K. We're also doing 10,000 pounds on our tonals, which
that's 10,000 pounds of volume.
Of volume, meaning I
can squat 10,000 pounds, just not all at once.
Right, and that's exactly the point. If you did 200 pounds 50 times, that would be 10,000 volume. For those of you that still don't know what we mean, and then you also take your ice bath. So we agreed to this beforehand, and just this morning, I got up. I only had time to run a 5K, and then I had to get my kids ready. And I'll be honest, man, I did not feel like running even 1K this morning, let alone a 10K. And I went out and I'm sitting there, I'm going around waiting for it to get better. It didn't get better. Literally, it just didn't get better. The whole time I was waiting for my heart rate to settle and for my breathing. It just never got better. It was the third day in a row now this week. And so I was like, okay, I had to go in and get the kids ready. And it was very easy to me to be like, you know what? I have things going on today. I have X, Y, Z. And I looked at my wife, I was like, as soon as I dropped the kids off, I was like, I'm going back out to get the second 5K. I was like, because here's what I thought. I know
it doesn't really matter.
Well, no, but this is the thing. It does matter, and the reason it matters is because I know why I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to run 100 miles. What I'm rehearsing on a daily basis right now is not, just I can run 30 miles at a time and not need to stop. That's not what I'm rehearsing. I'm rehearsing doing what I don't want to do over and over and over again. So I knew, I was like, whatever I'm practicing in a small amount right now will grow into a big amount. And I didn't want to sow the seed of giving myself a mental rep of taking the easy way. So I got myself back out there. I dragged through it, came back in, tried to beat your tonal score because currently Garrett's in the lead. But I'm going to take that title from him, and that's the fun part. Is we are in a race to see who can do it the fastest.
Like I said yesterday on my story, this is like that one time on the podcast where Nick thought he was better at math than me.
I know, but I feel like
you can run faster than me. You can't outlift me.
There's different ways to measure that. I will say, I know I can't lift more single rep amounts than you, but I feel like I have a chance in the tonal, and I also feel like the Lord's gifted me with the the gift of humility for you. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring everything I got.
You can't do shoulder shrugs or calf raises on the tonal.
Dude, we've already established the rules. I'm not gonna cheat. I'm gonna beat you the right way. Anyways, let's keep going, G.
So this story you're telling,
Yeah.
of this morning with
just
your
this morning.
5K.
Yeah.
This is what you were doing. You were considering it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the symptom of a quitter.
Right.
And
so
that's what made me mad. I was like, screw you.
Well, your doctor is going to look at the symptom, right? He's going to say, okay, you're considering it.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm diagnosing you whether you have the disease or not.
Right.
And if I'm going to look at your considerate, here's what I'm looking at. I just gave one side of considerate is you're considering, why does it matter? And when you had that thought, you rejected it and you said that it does matter.
Yeah.
Because the other side of what the right type of considerate, right? The wrong considerate is why does it matter in like a negative way? And you're just devaluing it. And really what you're saying is I don't want to pay the price.
Correct.
The other type of considerate, and this is a considerate of wisdom. This is a considerate not of price, but of path. The other considerate asks this question and says, is this the right direction?
Yeah.
Do I need to go in this direction? Right? Like when I was 7 years old and I quit soccer at the end of the season, I said, you know what? I don't want to keep going in that direction. It wasn't like in the middle of the season, because my parents would let me quit sports, but not in the middle of the season.
Right.
Right. In the middle of the season, the quit is, well, why do I have to finish?
Right.
Right. That's the wrong type of quit.
Correct.
The right type of quit is saying, right, like, I did one semester of college. I did one class, and I was right after I finished high school, I started a semester at Quad C. I attended 2 classes of one class, right? I went twice, and I was like, nope, this is definitely, I was pretty sure. Now I'm really sure.
Yeah.
This is not the path for me, right? It wasn't like I can pass school. I can do fine in school. I knew this is not the direction that I want to go in.
Yeah.
Right. So there's 2 types of considerate. There's the considerate of the price, or there's the considerate of the path. The price is saying, why does it matter? And really when you're saying, why does it matter, is you're saying, I don't want to pay the price. Right. You weren't saying, like, if it was easy to run your 5K, why wouldn't you just do it?
Yeah.
Right. What you were saying is, why does it matter in accordance with how much this hurts?
Right. Yeah. I just woke up and I was like, dude, I'm not feeling it. Yeah, you're exactly right.
The right type of considerate. So if you're struggling with the price considerate, your doctor is going to diagnose you with the disease of quitting.
Correct.
Right. If you have the other type of considerate where you're saying, well, I'm not sure if is this the right path for me or not? I'm not saying that you don't have the disease of quitting, but it is not near as sure of an indicator.
Yeah.
If you constantly get into a lot of things, right? And this is kind of jumping to the end, but the end symptom of quitting, right? If you quit once in your life because you say, like, you know what, I quit soccer at 7 because I don't want to go that direction. That's great.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go that direction. I do want to go this direction.
Correct.
I've determined that, and I'm going to keep going in that way. But if you quit one thing and then go to the next thing and say, you know what, I don't think this is the right path for me, and you quit that and you go on to the next one, I don't think this is the right path for me, and you go on to the next one, no, that's a poor track record. And as much as you don't want to believe it, you still have the disease of quitting. You have told yourself it's none of the right paths, but ultimately you've connected path to price paying, because a part of every path will require you to be a price payer.
Yeah,
right. And some people will deselect their path because they think paths are supposed to be easy.
Yeah, very good, G. I hope everybody got that, because if you listen to that and really reflect on it, you'll start to recognize when it is okay to quit. Because there's some things that should be quit. I mean, we've talked about it before, and I don't want to go deep down the path. I think where people have the hardest time quitting on things that they should is on long-time relationships where they've split apart and gone different trajectories, but they're holding on to it because of some romantic idea of friends for life. I don't know why that just entered my head, but I just wanted to share it because I think
there's
it's for
a lot.
somebody.
You need to quit making wrong choices.
Yeah.
You need to quit getting in debt.
Yeah.
Right? It's the wrong path for you.
For sure.
Quit doing those things.
Exactly.
Right. So we do want to be able to. I want to quit the right things, and I don't want to quit the right things, and I want to quit the wrong things in my life. Right.
Yeah.
The wrong things are things that are not in the direction that I'm going.
Yeah.
Right. They're wrong paths for me, but I don't want to quit things that are on my path just because I don't like the price of it.
Yeah, very good. All right, well, G, let's get to the cure, because I think that the diagnosis was good. So the way we divide cure.
I want to summarize the diagnosis real quick before
right.
we go on to the cure. Remember, it's this. You're looking at the source of the symptoms, right? Go back to those symptoms, the symptoms of consider it. You're dating your excuses. You're having these conversations with yourself. You are talking about the narrative and justifying your excuses, and you even have some quitting in your life, right? But to diagnose it is you're going to look at the source of it. And that's through the filter of consider it. You're saying, am I quitting because of the price, or am I quitting because it's the wrong path?
Yeah.
Right. So let's say you've been diagnosed with quitting. Your doctor said, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but you have a disease called quitting, right?
Dang.
How do we cure it?
Yeah.
Right. There's a treatment for it.
Yeah, and that's great. We're going to go into the treatment, but we broke it down by why people quit and why people don't quit, because really within those is highlighted the cure. So where do you want to go first? Do you want to go with why people quit?
Let's talk about why people quit.
Why people quit. And we talked about this earlier. You didn't count the cost, right? Like, I think this is actually one of the biggest reasons why people quit.
This is also scripture, by the way.
Right. Yeah. No man who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God.
And it also says, who sets out to build a structure without first knowing how many stones it would take?
Right. And that's, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you wouldn't build a house and be like, oh, wait, I need a roof on this thing? That's crazy. And we think that that's logical. Like, we understand that. But the difference between buying a house and actually committing to something is the house has a very predetermined price tag on it. You don't know the full price.
Where a lot of people miss it is, like, you might measure up how much lumber or how many stones it takes to build a house, and you'd be short. You know why? Because in every building structure, there is overage, right? Like, you've got to trim material. Like, there's loss of material.
Correct.
You actually need the amount of material that is in the structure is not the amount of material that you started with. Right. A lot of people underestimate how difficult or how much something is going to cost. And you need to say, you know what? I don't even just have enough to build this structure. I've got more than enough. And if I don't have enough, I know how to go get more stones.
Yeah. And that's what it is, because what they'll make the decision on, I think where this kills people is they'll be like, well, yeah, I do want that. Well, of course you do. Who doesn't want to be a Navy SEAL? Who doesn't want to be a millionaire? Who doesn't want to have six-pack abs? Like, I'm just using really obvious ones in our society. Everybody wants it. Well, why doesn't everybody have it? Because they're not willing to do what it takes to get there. When they're counting the cost, they're like, "Oh yeah, well I saw this guy, he hustles. I can do that I'm going to start doing that." And they don't realize how long it is.
They've accepted a narrative where it was good that they tried.
Right.
Because somewhere along the way we decided that we should give people medals for trying.
Right. Dude, participation trophies, not the way.
Hey man, you gave it all. You gave it your all.
Right. And I think that's devastating. If you gave it your all and it still wasn't enough, that's a hard question to answer.
Few people ever do give it their all.
That's exactly the point. Now, the next thing for why quit, we got 4 reasons on here, was that they signed up wrong, right? Some people are putting themselves, like, I would not enter myself into a powerlifting competition. I'm not weak, but I'm not a power lifter, and I'm going to use myself as that example. If I was to get into that and then start going down that path and then get to where I already know, oh man, actually powerlifting isn't something that's a strength of mine. This is actually hurting me. It's damaging my ligaments, whatever it is. Now I'm going to quit. Like, I should have never signed up for that in the first place. And I'm using myself, but people will do this all the time.
Yeah, usually, like, the type of person that is the signed up wrong person is someone who is, like, lacks prudence,
right,
and doesn't really think things through. They just, like, throw their name on something,
yeah,
right? And they, like, these are people who commit too easily. They're like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Oh yeah, I'll do this. And they're like, oh, and then, like, later they realize what they signed up for. It's similar to didn't count the cost, but, like, not counting the cost is like, hey, I want to do a marathon, right? Like, I really want to do this, but then I didn't actually ever look at how much training it takes. Right. Someone who signed up wrong is all your friends are doing a marathon, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do that too.
Right.
But then, and then you see the training plan, and you're like, well, I also have all these other things going on in my life, and I have an injury. I overcommitted myself without thinking.
Right. And that happens all the time, man, all the time. The other one, and this is kind of, you'll see how I think all these tie together, is unprepared, right? Like,
maybe you did count the cost,
right,
but you don't have the juice in your wallet.
That's exactly right.
Right. You're like, yep, I know what it would take to prepare for a marathon. I want to run a marathon, or I want to run 100 miles or whatever it is, but you actually just didn't do the training plan.
You know what really all these have in common, G? And actually the 4th reason was zoom in on pain. And we use pain, but I feel like you zoom in on any extreme emotion. People get sold on things all the time, right? Where they're like, man, you know what? I really do want that. Like, you're right. this car is going to make me feel a certain way, insert whatever you're buying, and you get sold in a moment and you commit yourself to something. And then, 3 months down the line, you're sitting there kicking yourself because you made an emotional decision. I think the cure for a lot of these things is just having some self-control and some equanimity. That's really where the wisdom comes to not get carried up or caught up in emotion. Because we talked about zooming in on pain. I mean, you watch guys who had dreamed their whole lives, trained for 6 years, put thousands of hours into prep, quit in a moment because all they could see was the pain. I think that's kind of the hallmark of making a bad decision.
They experience the most pain they've ever felt in their life. Right, and they go to a point further than they've ever taken themselves.
Yeah,
and then they say, well, what if it gets worse? Right, they don't know how bad it could get. Right, they say, what if it does? Yeah. And then they also say, I can barely do this for 5 minutes, and I'm supposed to survive in this training for another 6 months.
Yeah,
there's no way. Right, and you've zoomed in on how hard it is in that moment. I remember like walking off the beach after some of these days. Like there were log PTs that we finished and we all walked into the pit, which is kind of like where the students hang out. And I don't think anybody said anything for like 5 minutes. It was like somebody died out there.
Really?
Like, I mean, and a lot of people quit. It was like, there were I remember log PTs in first phase where all of us like went past a place we'd ever been in our life.
Wow.
Right. And 60 of us went out there and 55 of us came back.
Right.
And it was like somebody died. Yeah. Right. And we sit there in the pit for a minute and just really think about like how difficult it was. But after those like 5, like we kind of like catch our breath for a second and then we start to laugh about it. Right. Like, man, that sucked.
Right.
Man, that was bad. Right. But like we begin to look beyond, because what I'm saying is the guys who quit that day on some of those awful log PTs, they thought like it'll never end.
Right.
Right. That's how they felt about it. And when we kind of like come out of our shock after a few minutes in the pit, we're laughing about it because there's like, it ended.
Yeah.
We did it. Right. And you just have to know that whatever the pain is in your life, you can get past it. It will end. Yeah. But you don't be the one who dies in the pain, right? Get past it. And eventually, like if it's the hardest thing you've ever done, you might be in shock for a few minutes after.
Right.
But then you look at your friends that you did it with and you'll laugh about it. Like, man, that was nuts.
Yeah.
But we did it. Right. Don't zoom in on pain. If you'll zoom out, you'll see purpose. Right. And at the very least, commit to not quit when it's hard.
Right.
Right. Don't quit because the price is too high. You know what? Maybe if you get back to the pit after that awful log PT, you've been beaten up, dragged through the dirt, and you finish it and you say, you know what? I don't think I really ever want to do that again. Right. Because we finished those log PTs and we knew, well, there's another one on Thursday.
Right.
And there's 2 more next week.
Yeah.
This won't be the last time we do that. That might be the appropriate time for you to quit. Say like, you know what? I don't want to do that again.
Right.
This is not the right place for me. Right. But don't quit when it's hard.
That's interesting to hear you say that. All right, well, let's talk about not quitting, and this is where we're really going to give you the cure. Very first thing that we said was belief and identity, which are such deeply rooted things. These are not things that are stirred up in a day, a week, or a month. Like beliefs and identity are so deep to who you are, but it really will be the thing that keeps you, and it could be a belief that you have not just about yourself, but also about what you're doing. I mean, you talked about whenever you were going to the SEAL teams, like you knew that this was something that if you did this, like what kind of life could you have? You envisioned
what could I do after this?
Right. Yeah, you looked at it as like, man, this is actually my pathway to absolute greatness.
I had a belief that my parents had given me that I did not want to let go of, which was you can have anything you want in life if you're willing to pay the price for it. And I said, if I can pay the price for this, what else can I pay the price for?
Yeah.
Right. Like it was a beautiful belief to have that as a 12-year-old. Right. But you've never been tested in it.
Right.
Right. But what a great belief to have. But now this is my opportunity to test it. Like my parents wrote this on paper for me. This is my opportunity to carve it in stone.
Yeah.
Right. I can have anything I want in life as long as I'm willing to pay the price for it. That was a belief that I had that wasn't necessarily about me. It was about me reaching my destiny, me doing what I feel like God has called me to do on the earth. By the way, we didn't mention it in the reasons why you quit. You quit when it's about you.
Yeah. Very
right.
Good,
but the reasons you won't quit, because I've told that story many times, right? The difference between the students who quit and the students who don't. But the reason I wouldn't quit is because I've decided, you know what, this is more important than me. This is, you know, why I have to pay my price, because the value of this isn't just for me, it's for so many others. And if I quit, it'll hurt others way more than I hurt in this moment.
Yeah, you had a belief in something greater. And I think the identity part is such a key thing, because we've talked about that people really have only two fears. And we took this from Tony Robbins, but it was, he says that people are afraid that they're inadequate, essentially, and that because they're inadequate, they won't be loved. So they have a fear that they're not enough. And when you have an identity, and truly this is like a greatness identity that I hope people build into themselves. I've witnessed it in Garrett, and I've witnessed it with some of the pro athletes that I've worked with. Not all of them, but some of them. They have this refusal to believe. It's like what we talk about in resiliency. You could give them mountains of data and lots of reasons why they're not good enough. And they're like, no, you just don't know who I am.
No amount of evidence can convince them otherwise, right? And remember, what we're talking about now is the cure.
Yes.
This is how to not be a quitter.
Yeah.
The first thing is your beliefs and your identity. And Nick and I, if you hang around the Impossible Life, we don't do it on this podcast, but if you follow us on Instagram and you see some of the other things that we do, maybe you can catch one of our classes called The Ideal You, where we talk about beliefs and identity. The second thing that is a part of your cure, is what Nick and I both call leverage. And what leverage has been for me is like, at first in life, you've got to lead yourself, right? And leading yourself is hard. It's always hard. It will always be hard. But you lead yourself well enough, eventually you get responsibility for some other things in your life. And I'm at a place now where I have my wife who needs me, my children who need me, other men in my life who need me, men that I'm leading who need me, my businesses who need me. And when I think about quitting, it's not like, what the lie from Satan is that the things that you want to do for yourself won't hurt anybody.
Right. Yeah.
Right. You think like you just sleeping in, you looking at porn or whatever it is. It's like, it won't hurt anybody.
Yep.
Right. It doesn't matter. Right. That's the lie. But the truth is, like, when you understand this is leverage, right? I have to show up today. I have to be my best. I must give all that I have. I must perform today, not for me, but because there's people who need me.
Yeah.
Right. What you've heard me say to our discipleship leaders many times in Mighty Men is that you carry the weight of other men's souls. Right. You are leading people who are new in their relationship with God. And the way that you live is an example for them.
Yeah.
If you do not live rightly, you will lead men astray, and you'll be held accountable for that.
Yeah.
Right. You have to understand how important it is that you show up and perform in your life. We're not performing to earn salvation. We're performing because of what God's done in our lives.
Yes.
And now I'm out on the battlefield getting to fight and take dominion, and I need to be my best, right? Because if I fall down here, if I fail here, the enemy is going to walk over my dead body and walk into my house where my family's at. The enemy is going to walk over my dead body and walk into all the other things that God's given me responsibility over. And that'll make you push a little bit harder than you would push for yourself.
What Garrett just demonstrated there by that story, we talked about how pain will start, and you'll consider it, you'll date the excuses, you'll have a conversation, an explanation to allow it, and then you'll have a narrative and justify it, right? That was the symptoms that we talked about. What you're doing when you leverage yourself is you're taking hold of that and reverse engineering it. You're saying, hey, I'm not going to wait for pain's explanation to come and tell me some story and then decide whether I'm going to believe it or not. I'm deciding right now what this means to me. And when you go through that and you start going, no, this is all the things that are attached onto it, and you really sit there and consider it, thoughtfully consider it, you are leveraging yourself so hard to understand why you're doing it. What you're doing is you're giving yourself the strongest why you could possibly have, and that will carry you through.
The next why you won't quit is your preparation.
Yes.
Right. If we looked at people who were preparing for a marathon or 100-mile race, and we had the data of how much they'd prepared, right? Not just how many miles they'd run, but like we did an in-depth analysis of how they had prepared, right? Not just their miles, but how much rehab they did, how much time they spent preparing, learning about their shoes, their nutrition, all of those things. If we stratified all of it and we put it out there and we tried to quantify how many hours they'd prepared and then looked at whether they completed the race or did not complete the race, there's always going to be statistical outliers. There's going to be the guy who did 0 hours of prep and finishes, and there's going to be the person who prepared more than 90% of the people and still quits. But if you looked at the data, overwhelmingly you would see that the more people prepared, the more likely they were to complete the race.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you prepare, you're also visualizing completion. You're not just making yourself better, right? You're not just strength training for the mission, right? But you're practicing finishing. You're practicing, this is what I do, right? If you want to be like, I spent a lot of time in the cold water before I went to SEAL training. I didn't really have a ton of awareness about what I was doing. I was just trying to practice not quitting. But what I was doing was practicing not quitting, right? It wasn't necessarily about making my physical body resilient to cold. You can do that a pinch, right? You can get used to it, but it's not near as much as you would like. It's not
Right.
it's not near as much as like how much you run
Right.
equates to endurance.
Correct.
Right? You can get like 2% better at the cold water by doing it. But what I was practicing was not quitting. And when you prepare, you're preparing to succeed. When you prepare, you're practicing not quitting. People who never practice, right? They have zero experience in this not quitting decision making.
Yeah, that's so good, G. All right, and then the next thing we said for not quitting is mindset, right? I mean, your mindset is going to make a massive impact. And I mean, your mindset makes a massive impact on everything. I mean, your thinking is central.
I look at mindset as tools that you have, right?
Right.
Like we have Mindset Mastery where Nick and I are teaching 12 different mindset mastery pieces that'll help you have a powerful mindset. I look at mindset as like tools that you have,
That's good.
right? A great carpenter can do pretty good with just a hammer, right? But he's going to perform a lot better with all of the right tools.
Yeah.
You want to have really good tools in what you're doing. And mindset mastery is these things like I need more than just a hammer. I need a scale. I need a saw. I need different types of saw blades. I need sandpaper. I need grooves. I need jigs. You need all these different things to help you be a good carpenter, right? And mindset, if you want to be like a craftsman with your life, you need mindset. And mindset are the tools that you have. Learning how to think about, learning about focus, learning about discipline, learning about principles, learning about time management. These are all tools that you have to make yourself show up and perform in the way that you want to perform, right? Like you're not going to build great cabinets just because like you like hammer the heck out of the wood. You're not going to build great cabinets just because you really want to. You need skills and tools, right? And that's what mindset is. They're mental tools.
Now, similar to that, because you talked about mindset mastery, similar to the tool, the craftsman with the tools, you come across a lot of the same challenges whenever you're a craftsman, right? And every once in a while, you'll need a tool that you're like, oh, I don't really have that one. But by and large, like you said, you got your hammer, you got your screwdriver, you got your wrench.
80% of the time, you're using 20% of your tools.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly how we designed the course, was that we wanted to give people the skills and the tool sets so that for most things in life, they're equipped. And I can't tell you how many times just, that I've used the things that I've learned from you or the things that we've developed just in our own time together where I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. You know how much authority you have in your life and how confident you feel when you're going into a situation and you've got the tool? Man, you sit next to somebody who's trying to figure it out and they don't even, like they're trying to put a nail in the wall. They don't even have a hammer. And you're sitting there like, I've got a nail gun. It is a game changer. So just want to say mindset, massive one.
All right. And then the last reason that we would not quit, the last type of cure, these are all like some pills that you need to take. Last one is see the lesson. Tell us about that, Nick.
Very good. Yeah, I think that when you see what you're learning for what you're doing, it'll give you a lot more leverage to keep going. But B, I think it's learning the lessons from if you've quit in the past, right? When we were talking about this, we were keeping to the SEAL examples. I mean, you always like to share Michael Mansour's story about a guy who quit BUD/S the first time, came back and was a Medal of Honor winner. I think if you can learn the lessons, look, we've all quit on stuff. There's not anybody that's listening to this that's like, I've never quit on anything in my life. Yes, you have. If you learn the lessons from that and you bring those into future endeavors, we're running the 100 for a second time. I can tell you that our approach this year is drastically different to last year. We are coming in not just kind of going, oh, hey, we're going to just go out there and rock it. We have a game plan and we have a strategy, much like whenever you compete in any sport. And when you go into it and you're there to execute a strategy, that's what's called competing. And I find when you compete, you have a lot better chance of winning. So we're going in with a competitor's mindset this year. I say that about our own personal example, but that's because we learned our lesson last year when we both failed. And so that's the example. So I am feeling good about what we're doing this year. I'm looking forward to completing it. But that's a microcosm, like a very small example of something that applies to everywhere in your life. Learn your lessons, bring those into what you do next, and don't quit.